Alright, hello everybody, welcome to another video today. My name is Chris, and today we're going to be going over the Big Lots closing list as of Saturday, July 20th, 2024. So in the state of Alabama, we have the Big Lots store in Troy, Alabama, and a lot in Arizona. So we have the Big Lots store in Flagstaff, Arizona, the Big Lots in Glendale, Arizona, the Big Lots in Levin, Arizona, two Big Lot stores in Mesa, Arizona. A total of, it looks to be six Big Lot stores in Phoenix, Arizona, two Big Lot stores in Mesa, Arizona, one Big Lot store in Levin, Arizona, one Big Lot store in Glendale, Arizona, one Big Lots in Flagstaff, Arizona, and Big Lots in Troy, Alabama. The Big Lots store in Scottsdale, Arizona, the Big Lots store in Tucson, Arizona, the Big Lots store in Anaheim, that's two Big Lots stores in Anaheim, California, the Big Lots stores in Carrillo, California, the Big Lots store in Otterwater, California, two Big Lots stores in Bakersfield, California, the Big Lots store in Beaumont, California, the Big Lots store in Carmelo, California, the Big Lots store in Cameron County, California, the Big Lots store in Chico, California, the Big Lots store in Concord, California, the Big Lots store in Corona, California, the Big Lots store in Culver City, California, the Big Lots store in Delano, California, the Big Lots store in Elkasion, California, the Big Lots store in Fairfield, California, the Big Lots store in Folsom, California, the Big Lots store in Fresno, California, the Big Lots store in Gilroy, California, the Big Lots stores in Hercules, California, the Big Lots store in Indio, California, the Big Lots store in La Mesa, California, the Big Lots store in Livermore, California, the Big Lots store in Lompoc, California, the Big Lots store in Long Beach, California, the Big Lots store in Los Banos, California, the Big Lots store in Mantisa, California, the Big Lots store in Merced, California, the Big Lots store in Milpitas, California, the Big Lots store in Modesto, California, the Big Lots store in Oceanside, California, the Big Lots store in Ontario, California, the Big Lots store in Placerville, California, the Big Lots store in Rancho Santa Margarita, California, the Big Lots store in Redlands, California, the Big Lots store in Riverside, California, the Big Lots store in Wahurt Park, California, two Big Lots stores in Sacramento, California, the Big Lots stores in Salnalias, California, the Big Lots store in San Bernardino, California, the Big Lots store in Santa Clara, California, the Big Lots store in Santa Maria, California, the Big Lots store in Santa Paula, California, the Big Lots store in Santa Rosa, California, the Big Lots store in Sim Valley, California, the Big Lots store in Stockton, California, the Big Lots store in Temecula, California, the Big Lots store in Tracy, California, the Big Lots store in Tula, California, the Big Lots store in Ukiah, California, the Big Lots store in Vacaville, California, the Big Lots store in Valencia, California, the Big Lots store in Woodland, California, the Big Lots store in Aurora, Colorado, the Big Lots store in Grand Junction, California, the Big Lots store in Littleton, Colorado, the Big Lots store in Longmont, Colorado, the Big Lots store in Manchester, Connecticut, the Big Lots store in Milford, Connecticut, the Big Lots store in Waterford, Connecticut, the Big store in Boca Raton, Florida, the Big Lots store in Bonita Springs, Florida, the Big Lots store in Clewiston, Florida, the Big Lots store in Coconut Creek, Florida, the Big Lots store in Destin, Florida, the Big Lots store in Handale, Florida, the Big Lots store in Hollywood, Florida, the Big Lots store in Miami Lakes, Florida, the Big Lots store in Orlando, Florida, the Big Lots store in Pompeo Beach, Florida, the Big Lots store in Savannah, Georgia, the Big Lots store in Thompson, Georgia, the Big Lots store in Crest Hill, Illinois, the Big Lots store in Lockport, Illinois, the Big Lots store in Niles, Illinois, the Big Lots store in Indianapolis, Indiana, the Big Lots store in Kokomo, Indiana, the Big Lots store in Kansas City, Kansas, the Big Lots store in Lafayette, Louisiana, the Big Lots store in Nechitawish, Louisiana, the Big Lots store in Laurel, Maryland, the Big Lots store in Lexington Park, Maryland, the Big Lots store in Rizzertown, Maryland, the Big Lots store in Laurel, Maryland, the Big Lots store in Dennisport, Massachusetts, the Big Lots store in Kentwood, Michigan, the Big Lots store in Okeems, Michigan, the Big Lots store in Portage, Michigan, the Big Lots store in Yeshapalanti, Michigan, the Big Lots store in Albert Lee, Minnesota, the Big Lots store in Kansas City, Missouri, the Big Lots store in St. Louis, Missouri, the Big Lots store in St. Louis, two Big Lots stores in St. Louis, Missouri, the Big Lots store in Helena, Montana, the Big Lots store in Carl Place, New York, the Big Lots store in Center Reach, New York, the Big Lots store in Queensbury, New York, the Big Lots store in Durham, North Carolina, the Big Lots store in Albany, Oregon, the Big Lots store in Salem, Oregon, the Big Lots store in Clifton Heights, Pennsylvania, the Big Lots store in Exton, Pennsylvania, the Big Lots store in Keene, South Carolina, the Big Lots store in Chester, South Carolina, the Big Lots store in Newberry, South Carolina, the Big Lots store in Rapid City, South Dakota, the Big Lots store in Layton, Utah, the Big Lots store in Logan, Utah, the Big Lots store in Berlin, Vermont, the Big Lots store in Fredericksburg, Virginia, the Big Lots store in Manassas, Virginia, the Big Lots store in Bellingham, Washington, the Big Lots store in Bern, Washington, the Big Lots store in Covington, Washington, the Big Lots store in Everett, Washington, the Big Lots store in Kent, Washington, the Big Lots store in Lacey, Washington, the Big Lots store in Linwood, Washington, the Big Lots store in Olympia, Washington, the Big Lots store in Port Angeles, Washington, the Big Lots store in Renton, Washington, the Big Lots store in Tacoma, Washington, the Big Lots store in Vancouver, Washington, the Big Lots store in Fond du Lac, Wisconsin, the Big Lots store in Memorine Falls, Wisconsin, the Big Lots store in Mount Pleasant, Wisconsin, the Big Lots store in Sheboygan, Wisconsin, and the Big Lots store in West Bend, Wisconsin. And again, these are all of the Big Lots stores that are going to be closing. This is the full list of them as of Saturday, July 20th, 2024. I want to sincerely thank you guys for watching. Link to the list will be located in the video description below. Thank you guys so much for watching, and that will be it.